felt so far, guys. I think they're both doing really good. To be honest, I think they're both doing pretty good. I think they're both holding their own. I think they both are making valid points.
Economy and immigration. We have
Hey
seen that
guys,
consistently in the polling.
setting up.
Both of those issues.
I told you guys I was going to come on this live. Let me find my remote. Oh, I found it. So yes, we're gonna get this party started today. So we have about 3 minutes before the debate starts. So guys, come in. We're just watching the debate together. We'll see what's going on tonight. We're just hanging out, legit. So yes, we're going to talk about J.D. Vance, Walz. You know, they represent two different political perspectives here. So we're going to see what's going to go on with them. I wrote a little bit of notes. I wrote some earlier too. See what my notes from this morning say. Y'all know I got my handy dandy notebook. So we are ready for the debate. Y'all ready? I am so ready. I told you I was going to come try to muster up some energy to do this, but this time I'm in my pajamas. Last time I did this late night debate and they didn't end, Donald Trump just kept talking. They didn't, him and Kamala didn't end until, what was it, like 11 o'clock in the morning. So this time, I'm just saying to myself, I am not waiting that long to do all of this. Can I switch this out? Yeah, I can. So that's good. So I've been trying to play around with TikTok a little bit. But yes, we got the handy dandy notebook. I think I did write a note about, yeah, I did. So it's here. This is from my general notes, just saying I'm excited about Walz because he gives very much coach dad vibes, and I'm excited about that. Some of the biggest differences between him and J.D. Vance tonight are going to be regarding the rhetoric around abortion. It seems like J.D. Vance is pro-life. I don't like to call him anti-abortion because that's not what they are really going on. They're going on based on pro-life. And so we're doing pro-life on J.D. Vance's side, and then abortion rights, the access to abortion is what they call it on Walz's side. And then Walz already has like established child care bills in his state, as well as during his tenure in Congress. So he's already made moves. I believe he's been in Congress for 20 plus years. So he's pretty much got, he should have this in the bag. We'll see. Because I feel like if you've watched J.D. Vance from the beginning to now, he's literally been like on his Elvis Presley. Like, he reminds me of Elvis so much. Like, he's been steadily improving his craft. Because at first I think he was nervous and just scared to be in the shadow of Donald Trump. And then they kind of probably smacked him around saying, like, you in the big leagues now, grow up. Stop combing your hair. Stop being vain. Stop looking in the camera with the smiles and with your eyes. So he's been like, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. He's been kind of on it. Still making no sense, but he's been trying. I can see a big improvement from when I first started covering J.D. Vance and Trump and all this stuff to now. You can definitely see the growth. And then I think, one of the things they're going to be talking about is swing states a lot. So they're both kind of hometown boys, like hillbilly rednecks, they like to call themselves. So that's going to be fun to see how they play into that. And then we also are going to hear them talk a lot about the middle class versus, J.D. Vance is going to be talking about the 1% and not necessarily 1%, but he's going to talk about tax breaks for all, but really for the rich. So we're going to have fun tonight. So it should be on in a few minutes. Hopefully they're not late. I think with the Kamala one, I feel like they were a lot late. They were like so late. It was just like you could tell that thing was thrown together, and they brought Trump out kicking and screaming that night. He did not want to debate that lady, but he did it, so it is what it is, and we got it down in history. So that's what we're doing tonight. And then just some general perspectives from like an outsider looking in. I wrote some notes about it. It says Vance is known for being different, which may appeal to voters. For example, he broke political social norms when it comes to the Republican Party by having an Indian American wife, things like that. Oh, here they are. Those are the big boys. Okay, guys, I'm gonna just talk about this stuff on commercial break. So let's get started.
Thank you, and thank you for those joining at home.
They're starting.
Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners. Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But the expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity.
If it kicks me off, I'll try to come back on.
You saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack. But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago. A nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment. But it's not just that. It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous.
That's my baby girl. I
His
checking
Chief
on
of
you.
Staff, John Kelly,
I told her to give me a
said that
minute.
he
Let
was
me
the
talk
most
to
flawed
y'all.
human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense and his national security advisors said he should be nowhere near the White House. Now, the person closest to them, Donald
We got
Trump,
killed two birds with
said
one
he's
stone.
unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions to bring them together. Understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the Vice President said today is, we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
Governor, your time is
This is the pretty part of the Politico.
Question. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate.
He sounds good, y'all. I told you he's been practicing his radio voice.
Myself a little bit, because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working-class family. My mother required food assistance for periods of her life. My grandmother required Social Security help to raise me. And she raised me in part because my own mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here asking to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country, for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams. And most importantly, I know that a lot of you are worried about the chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again.
Look at Waltz. He like a pit bull. He listens to every word he's saying.
As much as Governor Waltz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence.
Not agency
People
of
were
chaos.
afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies, and God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look,
please answer the question.
Israel, what they think they need to
They
do
say
to keep
VP
their
debates are
country safe,
pointless,
and we should
but
support our
Joe Biden
allies
helped
wherever they are,
Obama win back
fighting
in the
bad
day,
guys.
so
I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel
with his
question.
debate, it made him seem like the
Thank you,
competent one.
Senator.
So that's what we're
Governor
hoping. The
Walz,
same thing
do
with
you
Walz.
respond to any of the allegations?
Well, look, Donald Trump was in office. We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations.
I'm glad he said that. Please remember that Donald Trump was actually already our president. People acting like they forgot.
Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its place. So Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership. And when Iran shot down an American aircraft in international airspace,
Y'all heard that?
Donald Trump tweeted, because that's the standard diplomacy of Donald Trump. And when Iranian missiles did fall near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as headaches. Look, our allies understand that Donald Trump is fickle. He will go to whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him.
Yeah, that's true.
Leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April, Both Iranian attacks were repelled. Our coalition is strong, and we need the steady leadership.
JD Vance like a little boy to me. I can't even take him like a kid.
The U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal.
How old is JD Vance? Is only 40 years old, y'all.
Just 5 days ago.
Y'all know that? He
must
only
now
40?
make a diplomatic
So
deal
technically
with
he
Iran
is kind of a
because
kid.
the
A
consequences
millennial.
are impossible. Did he make a mistake?
We gonna have a
with one
millennial
Well, first of all,
in the White House.
diplomacy is not a dirty word, but
I don't
think
mind
something
that.
Governor Walz
I'm a
just
millennial
said is
myself.
extraordinary. You yourself just said
I don't think we
Iran's
ready to
as
grow
close
up as
a nuclear weapon
millennials.
today
All right,
as
got
they've
these
ever
two.
been.
Look, as I bring
Walz
out
blamed Donald
Butterfly
Trump. Who has been
nail
vice president
kits.
for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made
So
the
cute.
world more secure. Now, we talk about what the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris. So Governor Walz can criticize
They got that. He got him.
but effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself at home, when was the last time? I'm 40 years old. When was the last
I'm 40 years old. I told y'all. I be doing my research.
Break out. The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald
I
Trump
be
was
trying to tell
president.
y'all I be researching for
John, we have a
real.
lot to get to. Nora?
You know, I don't just be telling y'all what the people want to hear. I tell you what the truth is.
Become one of the deadliest on record. More than 100.
I'll tell you what they don't want you to know.
Are dead,
Over
and
here,
hundreds more are missing.
I'm going to say it.
Scientists say climate change makes these hurricanes larger, stronger, and more deadly because of the historic rainfall. Senator Vance, according to CBS News polling, 7 in 10 Americans and more than 60% of Republicans under the age of 45 favor the U.S. taking steps to try and reduce climate change. Senator, what responsibility
Call
would the
me?
Trump administration
No, I didn't
have
call
to try
you.
and reduce the impact
You
of
hanging with
climate
Daddy?
change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure. So first
Okay,
of all, let's
that's
start
good.
with the hurricane because it's
How you feeling with you now?
I'm feeling good. I'm just trying
I
to
gotta
watch.
pay my nails too.
We going to do that for you tomorrow, okay?
With a 6-year-old child.
I'm just taking care of myself today.
Child,
Child, y'all know these babies don't let you have a moment. She's like, because when I do my nails, I usually do her nails in order to do my nails. So today she's like, hold on, how you doing your nails without me? Thanks to you guys, because I am doing something. So my husband's out there watching her or hanging with her. She big now.
I mean, these are communities that I love.
I don't think
some
she
of them I
need to
know
be
very
watched.
personally.
She's 5.
Appalachia, all across the southeast, they need their government to do their job, and I commit that when Donald Trump is president again, the government will put the citizens of this country first when they suffer from a
He
disaster.
can't guarantee that. He don't even know Donald Trump till he get in that
This is
office.
a very important issue.
He do not know that man, just like Pence didn't know that man.
About all these crazy weather patterns, I think it's important for us, first of all, to say Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the
Donald Trump and
environment to be
I.
cleaner and safer.
You
But one of the
don't-
things that I've noticed,
anyway.
our Democratic friends talking a lot about.
So funny. They done
is
coached
a
him well there. That's all I say.
carbon emissions. This idea that
Trying to
carbon
be,
emissions drives all the climate change. Let's
unbiased.
just say that's true, just for the sake of argument.
But it's hard to be unbiased when these people are so obvious what's happening
If you
here.
believe that,
I see what's happening
The
here.
answer is that you want to reshore as much American manufacturing as possible, and you want to produce as much energy as possible in the United States of America because we're the cleanest economy in the entire world. What have Kamala Harris's policies actually
we
led
really?
to? More energy production in China, more manufacturing overseas, more doing business in some of the dirtiest parts of the entire world. And when I say that, I mean the amount of carbon emissions they're doing per unit of economic output. So if we actually care about getting cleaner air and cleaner water, the best thing to do is to double down and invest in American workers and the American people. And
Y'all can hear?
unfortunately, Kamala Harris has done exactly the opposite.
I think y'all can.
Governor Walz, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Well, we got close to an agreement because all those things are happening. Look, first of all, it is a horrific tragedy with this hurricane, and my heart goes out to the folks that are down there.
That Helene
In
thing is
contact
crazy.
With the governors, I serve as co-chair of the Council of Governors as we work together on these emergency managements. Governors know no partisanship. They work together to help the governors and the emergency responders.
I love that.
Those happen on the front end.
Governors
The
know no
federal government
partisanship.
comes in, make sure they're there to that we recover, but we're still in that phase.
Her,
where we need to
that's
make
his
sure
bar.
that
That's
we're
actually kinda
staying there,
true.
staying focused. Now look, coming back to
You
the
think
climate
about
change
it.
issue, there's no
Talk
doubt
about
this
that
thing
next week.
roared onto the scene
I'm gonna write that one
faster and
down.
stronger than anything we've seen. Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sits in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We're producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have.
He know his stuff.
Producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current, and that's what absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned
That's crazy.
President Trump has
Effective
called climate change a
energy
hoax. Do you agree?
superpower.
Well, look, what the president
That's
has
a bar.
said is that if the Democrats,
With still
in particular,
providing
Congress
for the
and her
future.
leadership, they
Mom,
really
yes,
believe
my
in
dad-
panels here in the United
So.
States of America. Some of them
I swear it's so funny because I do lives with her here all the time, and she just sits so quietly, but now her dad just want to, you know how men are. When you're in a room by yourself, they want to watch what you're doing.
You've got to invest in more energy production.
When he don't, I usually be on live when he ain't home. Y'all see now, y'all see what I do 2 o'clock. I do at night, this is gonna happen.
Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing
Senator,
worse by
your
the
time
climate.
is up. Governor, would
And
you
I
like to
missed the
respond?
point, so I'm kind of aggy, but it's okay.
We're producing more natural gas.
They're
We are
farting on
producing
each other,
more
by the way,
oil
in
now.
case you
We're
were wondering
producing
what that
more oil.
was.
But folks know, and like I said again, these are not liberal folks.
Kids,
These are not
aka
folks that
husband
are
and
Green
child.
Deal folks. These are farmers that have been drought one year, massive flooding the next year. They understand that it makes sense. Look, our #1 export cannot be topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer. And thinking about how do we respond to that,
JD,
we're thinking ahead on
Walt's
this.
eating them
What
up.
Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota, we're starting to weatherproof some of these things. The infrastructure law that was passed allows us to think about mitigation in the future. How do we make sure that we're protecting by burying our power lines? How do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that we're seeing more and more of? But to call it a hoax and to take the oil company executives to Mar-a-Lago, say, give me money for my campaign, and I'll let you do whatever you want.
Wow.
We need to be smarter about that. And an all-above energy policy is exactly what she's doing, creating those jobs right here.
He said stop getting in bed with the other countries when we have oil right here in America that we can use and produce. Instead, Donald Trump is saying that if you give us some cheap oil from another country, because it's more expensive to hire workers here to siphon the oil.
Senator Vance, your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest
It's
mass
more
deportation
I'm gonna let
plan
them
in
answer
American
this
history.
today.
and
We'll
to
talk about it during
use the
commercial
U.S.
break.
military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil? You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the
See how
floodgates.
men
What
are?
it's meant is that a lot of
Why he got her on the
fentanyl
microphone
country,
when I'm trying to do my
and
live? We on live all the time by myself with nobody in the house, and she sit there so quietly.
So you've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to
But he got her
rebuild
on
Donald Trump's
a karaoke
policies,
microphone.
Build the wall, wall,
Yeah.
deportations, and that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 25 million illegal aliens in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing we do is we start with the
I think sometimes they mean well.
A million of those people have committed crossing the border illegally. I think you start with deportations on those folks.
She said I've been with my mommy all day.
Illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American
She over there like,
workers.
I'm tired of you, Daddy. Leave me alone.
If they can't work for less than
So
minimum
funny.
wage in our own country.
Anyway, that's it. I ain't gonna polish them because I gotta go to sleep soon. You know how you can't sleep with no polish. But yeah, I try to keep them nice and neat and short. They do grow pretty long if I let them, and they're pretty sturdy. Like they're not
some of them
strong.
hopefully are at homes with their families. Some of them have been used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open.
I think JD Vance is talking about old topics.
When she came into office, she said she was going to do this. Real leadership,
like the whole drug mule thing. That's so 1990s.
Border policies. I wish that she would do that.
Nobody really cares anymore. People coming over here because of Instagram too. They want to be influencers and take cute pictures. It's not always as deadly and gangster as some want to make it out to be. Some people just want to be cute.
As drug mules, among other things, regarding children.
The drug mule is not true, but I will say about the fentanyl,
Exactly.
this is a crisis of this, the opioid crisis, and the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history. 30% decrease in
talk
Ohio,
about that
but there's still more work to do. But let's go back to this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the
San
Attorney
Diego.
General of the largest state, a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this. And that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen.
They upped his mic.
Conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Langford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said this is what we need.
They're saying essentially it's a bipartisan bill.
The Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents. Detection for drugs. DOJ money to speed up.
I understand what Kamala's saying, that they need new ICE because they're getting bought off already. It all makes sense now.
Donald Trump said no, told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him to, what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things? And they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch. So look, we have the options to do this. Donald Trump had 4 years. He had 4 years to do this. And he promised you, America, how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it. Less than 2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people and telling them what he was going to do. As far as the deportation plan, at one point, Senator Vance said it was so unworkable.
He eat them up, y'all.
So that's where we're at. Pass the bill, she'll sign it.
Period. Pass the bill like they used to do. Pass the bill like they used to do. Yes, I love that. He said, pass the bill, she'll sign it. Period.
Thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country, and we know that they use children as drug mules, and it is a disgrace, and it has to stop. Look, I think what Tim said just doesn't pass the smell test. For 3 years, Kamala Harris went out bragging that she was going to undo Donald Trump's border policy. She did exactly that. We had a record number of illegal crossings. We had a record number of fentanyl coming into our country. And now that she's running for president, or a few months before, she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed.
I gotta look up that one.
To stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president.
Senator, your time is up. Governor.
That's deep. He said that 94% of Donald Trump executive action have been repealed that were in regard to the border. You know they be lying, so I'm gonna have to look that up. But it sounds good.
With a bill that is
Can you see me?
necessary, but the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this, and Senator Vance, and
This is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize
I will
it.
create stories to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield.
I agree with
The
that.
Republican governor said, it's not true, don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Langford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
That's what I've been trying to tell y'all this whole time. Where is the humanity? It's abusive. Y'all was here earlier when I said that,
The
right?
governor has made the point, and I think as a sitting lawmaker, you know that Congress controls the purse strings and any funding. So you have said repeatedly that Donald Trump would, through executive action, solve this. Do you disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement? You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our borders are. Kamala Harris has been.
I wonder how law enforcement gonna feel about that. They probably like do our job.
To do their job. Of course, additional resources would help, but most of this is about the president and the vice president empowering
shouldn't have said
law
that.
enforcement to say, if you try to come across the border illegally, you've got to stay in.
He said this is about staying on Border Patrol to do their job. I know they're not going to take that lightly. I would be offended if I was Border Patrol. How dare you? You don't know what we go through, you.
In Springfield, Ohio, and in communities
Y'all know how I feel about you, sassy little queen, you.
Schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed.
He's so sassy.
You've got housing.
Isn't he? Look at him. The eyelashes, the liner.
Illegal immigrants
So
to compete
good.
with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who have had their lives.
How dare the sassy princess tell the police force at the border they're not doing their jobs on national
I
television?
think you want to solve this problem, but I
He just be talking. He just say
Senator,
stuff.
your time is up. Governor, you
That
have 1 minute
frustrates.
to
Even
respond.
Donald Trump is frustrated with him.
It is law enforcement that asked for the bill. They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because
Boom, shakalaka.
This issue of continuing
Law enforcement are the one that created the bill, so of course they're enforcing the bill. You jerk.
On housing, we could talk a little bit about Wall Street speculators buying up housing and making them less affordable, but it becomes a blame. Look, this bill also gives the money necessary to adjudicate. I agree. It should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in 90 days. Then you start to make a difference in this, and you start to adhere to what we know, American principles. Look, I don't talk about my faith a lot, but Matthew 25:40 talks about, to the least amongst us you do unto me. I think that's
What?
of most Americans. They simply want
Matthew 20:40,
Bill does it.
period.
It's funded.
Get it?
It's supported by the people who do
2024.
it, and it lets us keep our dignity.
These people.
About how we treat other people.
Yeah.
Thank you, Governor. And just
That
a
was
quick
clap. That was so good.
Springfield,
He said,
Ohio,
let me tell you
a
Matthew's
large number of
2024.
Haitian migrants who
Where's
have
my,
legal status, temporary
Let me look what it is. I know you read it, but I missed
Thank you,
it.
Senator. We have
I was running my
so much to
mouth.
get to.
Margaret, I think it's important
We're
because,
gonna turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that you got.
And he doesn't have any respect, no respect.
I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app where you can
about to tell
go
too
on
much.
as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand.
I'm
That
looking
is
it up,
not a person
CB1
coming in,
mobile
applying
app.
for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That
Thank
is
you,
the
Senator.
facilitation of a
I'm gonna look it up
legal
right
immigration
as we
Thank you,
speak.
Senator.
And I'm also gonna look up Matthew
We
2024.
have so much to get to, Senator.
Those
We have
laws
so
have been on
much.
the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The
We
CBP
want to have.
app has not been on the books.
It's something that Kamala Harris created.
He said no, that CB1 been on the book since 1990. He said no, that's something Kamala created. I'm gonna look it up. I'll let y'all
Thank you,
know.
Margaret. The economy is a top concern
CBP
for voters.
90s
Each of your
or
campaigns
Kamala.
has released an economic plan, so let's talk about
And then he said, I already wrote down
Mayor
the
Walz,
Christian
Vice
thing, so
President
we'll
Harris
read
unveiled
that.
a plan that includes billions in
Okay,
tax
wait, what was
credits
the...
for
I wish I could pause it, but I can't.
housing
Okay.
and a renewed child tax credit. The Wharton School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class because that's where we come from. We both grew up in that. We understand. So those of you out there listening tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back and forth, and it's good. It's healthy. That's what this is supposed to happen.
But it's not allowing them citizenship. It's allowing them to make an appointment to escape
is one is talking about this housing issue. The one
like
thing is
abuse in their
3
countries.
million new houses proposed
That's what
under this
America's
plan,
for.
with down payment assistance on
And
the
it's
front end.
like in
Yeah,
Mexico.
a house is much more than just
Enabling them to make
an asset be traded
appointments
somewhere.
without having to
It's foundational
travel
where you're at.
all the way
And then
to
making
the
sure that
United
the things you
States.
buy every day, whether
That's
they be
all it is.
prescription
It's saying,
drugs
don't
or
come
other
here, don't
things,
cross the
that there's
border,
fairness in that.
make an
Look, the
appointment with us so we can talk
$35
to you
insulin is a good
so that we can
thing.
help
It
you
costs
do it the
$5
right
to make
way.
insulin. They were charging
They ain't listening to that because they want it
$800
now. They're going to just continue to jump the
As far as
border.
housing goes, I've
So
seen
that's
it
what
in
he's
Minnesota.
talking about.
12%
They made.
more
I'm going to keep
prices
clarifying
went down
that
on
for you
rent
guys.
4%. It's working.
He's lying about
And
the
then making sure
CB1. It
tax
has
cuts
nothing
go
to
the
do
middle
with
class.
letting them
$6,000
in
child tax
free.
credit. We have one in Minnesota.
Teaching them the right
Reduces
way to come
childhood
in.
poverty by
A
third. We
humane
save money
way.
in the long run, and we do the right thing for families.
And it's for
And that
everybody, not
changes
just
off the
Mexico.
ground. The
There's a
laws
Cuban
stand
one, a
right now,
Haitian one, a
$5,000
Nicaraguan one, a
tax credit for
Venezuelan
small
one.
business, increasing that to
Yeah,
$50,000.
yeah.
This is a
That's why you gotta look up
philosophical difference
stuff.
between us. Donald Trump made a promise. And
All right,
I'll
now
give you
look
this,
up
he
Matthew
kept it.
20,
He took
20,
folks from
20,
Mar-a-Lago, City
40.
Richards,
Love
gave you
that. That was
tax
so
cut.
good.
He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever.
All right, I missed this part, y'all. Y'all gonna have to fill me in.
20%
I'm gonna read you the Matthew 20:40 thing. It says, and Jesus looked around and said to his disciples, how hardly will those who have riches enter into the kingdom of God? Basically a direct jab at the Republicans and their 1% ideology. That's a bar. That's a bar. I'm gonna post that one tonight, y'all. I'm gonna say, in the words of my guy,
Senator, I want to
this
give
make
you
me
another
like
twist
him.
on
I
that.
was, we're all nervous about this Kamala ticket. Like, we don't really know these people, so this feels good. This feels like home. Like, this feels like somebody I talked to on the regular. I'm talking about Walls.
How do you pay for all that?
All right, let me hear
without ballooning
JD.
the deficit? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer. A lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do, and some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it. Because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years, she had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies. And
But they stole that from Joe Biden because Joe Biden said, why didn't Trump do it? Now they've been using that jargon over. And it's so corny to me when you say something and then somebody steal what you do and then take it and use it over and over. It makes it so corny to me.
Life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle class problems, then she ought to do them now. Not when asking for
It's
promotion.
literally what Joe Biden said. Every time they say it, I cringe and get angry on the inside because
tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans.
Such a copycat. It's giving Melania copying Michelle's entire First Lady speech.
Trump's plans, and they
So
have
disgusting.
PhDs, but they don't have common sense.
They copy every single thing. They are just
Donald Trump's
copycats.
policies
It's
to
just
deliver
actually
the
disgusting.
highest take-home pay in a generation in this country.
Has JD Vance said anything original this entire time? I don't think so. All of it's repetitive and copycat of Joe Biden.
Look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle-class and working-class Americans.
I believe that. That's what you guys are talking about.
And you saw an American economic boom unlike we've seen in a generation in this country. That is a record that I'm proud to run on, and we're going to get back to that common sense wisdom so that you can afford to live the American dream again. I know a lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about paying the bills. It's going to stop when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this country.
Governor, do you want to respond to that? What has Kamala Harris done for the middle class?
Yeah, well, Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, the largest percentage since the Great Depression. 9 million jobs closed on that. That was day one. Whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things we moved. Now, you made a question about experts said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does.
9 million jobs after COVID
If you
were
need
lost.
heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal taxes in the last 15 years, the last year as president? That's what's wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
You have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts, but those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, it would somehow make
It's too late, bro. We're in a global economy. Not going to take us in 1920s. We're not going to be able to create in the way we are. We're in a global economy.
Bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American.
He said that last
We're
time.
making more of our own stuff, and this isn't just an economic issue. But I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much. And I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop, and we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom, which is what Donald Trump governed on.
Senator, your time is up. Governor Walz, can you address that? I mean,
What's this common sense thing?
on the economy.
He keeps saying common sense economy, common sense wisdom.
Billionaires get tax cuts. You heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I understand. Look,
Common sense
we produce
wisdom.
soybeans and corn.
Interesting.
We need to have fair trading partners. That's something that we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China. So the rhetoric is good. Like the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my communities, and we talked about that. But we had people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult. We had companies that were willing to ship it over. And we saw people profit. Folks that are venture capital in some cases, putting money into companies that were overseas. We're in agreement that we bring those home. The issue is Donald Trump is talking
Eating him up. He said Donald Trump is the reason we see. He said Donald Trump is the first person that made the most profit overseas in his private
I
businesses.
appreciate that. So if you notice, what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics show that he did. So what Tim Walz is doing...
He said, no, that's a gross
I think
generalization.
he got a tough job here.
Where's my, I gotta go on TikTok, y'all. I mean, on,
rising take-home pay, which of course he did.
I gotta see.
You gotta pretend that Donald
I gotta
Trump
see what the
didn't
people
deliver
are saying. This
lower
is
inflation,
crazy.
which of course he did. And then you simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I know what it's like to not be.
He's like preaching. He's not telling the truth.
We can do so much better. To all
We can do so much better. Yeah, we can.
America that's affordable again. We just gotta get back to common sense economic principles.
I hope we have a conversation on healthcare then.
Senator,
He's like, I hope you have a conversation on healthcare. I know that's
we
right.
have a lot to get to ahead, gentlemen. On
This
many
is
topics,
crazy.
but right now, I want to talk about personal qualifications. The vice president is often the last voice the president hears
Oh my
before
gosh.
making consequential decisions. We want to ask you about your leadership qualities. Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during
What?
the deadly
Am I kicked
Tiananmen
off?
Square protests in the
Let me
spring
try
of
again. What's going on?
1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel.
Oh, no, that was
I grew up in
weird.
small rural
Kicked me off, I think. I don't know.
400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the street lights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined National Guard at 17.
Yeah, because sometimes it kicks you off.
And then I
Sorry, guys. I don't know if I got kicked off or not.
Passionate about it. A young
But it
teacher.
does that sometimes.
My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try
Wow.
to learn. Now look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect, and I'm a knucklehead at times.
I'm reading some of the comments from other pages.
People elected me to Congress for 12
It ain't
years.
saying nothing different than what I'm saying. It seems like,
Bipartisan people.
seems to be a lot of Trump questions, a lot of Kamala questions, not related to them. I kind of agree with that. It's not a lot of information pertaining to them. It's mostly just
to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything. Many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us.
Period.
He wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID.
I know that's
I
right.
guarantee you, he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community, and then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier, or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
That was a little bit, that's the first time I heard, Wall.
Can you explain the discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this, so I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in, and from that I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's the first time I heard him kind of stumble a little bit, and it was it was hard to watch, not gonna lie.
And you said he could be America's Hitler.
But he's feeling it. He's like, look at JD's eyes. He's like, ooh, yeah. He's happy about that mistake. I hope that doesn't shake Waltz up too much, because he's been doing really good tonight. So we'll see. Oh my gosh, guys, this is crazy.
Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism. You're now his running mate, and you've shifted many of your policy stances to align with his. If you become vice president, why should Americans trust that you will give Donald Trump the advice he needs to hear, and not just the advice he wants to hear?
I'm gonna turn it around, because I think they're kicking out the people because I got the TV on. I'm gonna get out and come back. Go back in, restart.
Secure southern border. A lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews, is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out to messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration in the first round if Congress was doing its job. I strongly believe, and I've been a United States Senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I think that we could have done so much more if the Republican Congress and the Democrats in Congress had been a little bit better about how they govern the country. They were so obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump, they couldn't actually govern. I want to talk about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing, and you're probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration, it's the one issue where Kamala Harris has run away from Joe Biden's record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers unless our country stands up for itself and says, you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
Senator, your time is up. Nora? Thank you. Now to the issue of reproductive rights. Governor Walz, after Roe versus Wade was overturned, you signed a bill into law that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade. 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about health care. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in health care for a reason. We trust women, we trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans
Pregnancy
care about it. A lot of
monitoring
Americans
agency?
don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight. And I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has
I wonder how many women
on
feel
this
like that.
than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
Governor, would you like to respond and also answer the question about restrictions?
Yeah, well, the question got asked and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you about this idea that there's diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia, a restrictive state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died in that journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography? There's a very real chance had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned, it was, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, You are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did when I was running for Senate in 2022 talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not, though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy
feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care.
And
as far as making sure that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state with one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates. We understand that too. We know that the options need to be available, and we make that true. We also make it, we're a top 3 state for the best place to raise children. But these two things to try and say that we're pro-children, but we don't like this, or you guys are pro-abortion, that's not the case at all. We are pro-freedoms for women to make their choices, and we're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case, to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator.
Let me respond to that.
I agree with that.
Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive.
Okay, he agrees with it too, yeah.
But I certainly wish that she was. And maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me, but as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think, whether you're pro-choice or pro-abortion, that is fundamentally barbaric. And that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen, do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of conscience. We can be a big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country more pro-baby and pro-family. But please.
Yes, Governor, please respond.
Look, this is one where there's always something there. This is a very simple proposition. These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to distort the way a law is written to try and make a point, that's not its best. That doesn't preclude us from increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals. They get early childhood education. They get health care. So that hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget, Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier.
You know what that means?
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So they fact-checked it with President Trump.
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss. We have to move on, and we're going to be right back with much more of the CBS News vice presidential debate in just a moment.
Oh, that's so interesting. I will say, what I felt so far, guys, I think they're both doing really good. To be honest, I think they're both doing pretty good. I think they're both holding their own. I think they both are making valid points. It was different because I think, everybody's saying Kamala's the female Obama, but the thing with the Joe Biden-Obama relationship, Obama was like this young, sprawling kid, kind of, in a sense, and then Joe Biden coming in and being like this kind of endearing, Tim Walz personality-esque sweet guy, and then when they did the debate, Obama kind of messed up on the first debate. And then when Joe Biden had his debate, he smashed it. It kind of helped the ticket. And I think they were expecting the same thing tonight. But I think Tim Walz, he's good. But I think J.D. Vance has been practicing. And I think he's been probably with the best debaters in the world because they do have the money. They have Elon Musk. So I wouldn't be surprised if they put him in what do you call those things where you have that dream sleep therapy thing? I wouldn't be surprised if they use some of the best mental health tools in the world to stimulate J.D. Vance for tonight. because he's doing pretty much better than I thought he would do. I think much better than we all thought he would do. I'm gonna be really honest, and he seems calm. You know, his answering all the questions. He's kind of a little repetitive when it comes to like the common sense wisdom. I think the big issue with the Waltz thing was that flub when he just made about. Honestly, I lost track. I wasn't even sure what it was about. Can you guys remember what that flub was like that he just had? I can't remember. But that was, and then he kind of, he did okay with the fertility stuff, but I feel like JD held his own with that in terms of saying, you know, we support fertility treatment and like the whole story. I got caught up in that story about the woman who wished they would have kept their baby. And it made me think, like, I wonder if a lot of other young girls feel like that. I don't know. And then I think JD had obviously, I mean, Waltz always has a point when it comes to like women has the right to their own body, their own autonomy. That's always going to be a thing. Like, we do deserve our rights to our bodies. But I think it's one of them things where it's kind of like, I always see both sides, because you're like, the dads have a right to that embryo as well. Oh yeah, I was on there earlier. Let me tell you guys. I was, yeah. I just went. I was just on there like 2 minutes ago. So I went on there like as soon as he said it, so I was able to get it. So essentially, guys, he was a little wrong about that. Let me show you. You can see it. It's probably not up now, but the minute he said it, I went there right away. So that it's been up for about 20 minutes. So I'm sure if I refresh it, it'll kick me out. But we'll talk about it. Maybe I should screenshot it before it goes away. You know how it goes. Let me screenshot it. But we'll talk about it. Maybe I should screenshot it before it goes away. You know how it goes. Let me screenshot it. But we'll talk about it. Maybe I should screenshot it before it goes away. You know how it goes. Let me screenshot it. So yeah, so the CB1, I basically skimmed through it. It can be spent anyway, either way politically. It really is just like what we are doing with the DMV right now. You know how like with the DMV they're saying you can't come in and just pop up, you have to do these appointments ever since COVID. It's kind of similar to that. So essentially they're saying like, if you want to come to the United States of America and you're from Mexico, don't travel north. Don't come all the way up here because you're not going to be allowed at the border, and it's extremely dangerous. We rather you fill out this application via this mobile app, CBP, and once you fill it out, it's basically saying once you fill it out, we'll give you an appointment date, and you can come into the United States for that appointment or at the border or whatever, and we'll interview you and discuss steps for you to then become an American citizen. It's basically gonna just do what it's basically it's not a shortcut. It's basically probably gonna meet up with the people and then tell them like what the steps are to become a U.S. citizen. But it's not like necessarily pushing them above the line or anything. It's just trying to prevent people from coming up to the border, and it's just like something to do. This is one of those things they were like, oh, this is gonna be a great idea, a strategic planning meeting. We have to, but it ain't gonna do nothing for nobody, and it probably hasn't helped many people either. Okay, so let's turn this back up. They're back, guys.
In some cases, the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases,
I'll be right back.
Actually do it. Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90%, in some of the by Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartel. So that number, the amount of illegal guns in our country is higher today than it was 3.5 years ago. But what do we do about the schools? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to increase school resource officers, because the idea that we can magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer. And I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office surrounded by dozens of the Sandy Hook parents, and they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead, and they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background checks, and we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it, and I here's what I do think, that this is a good start to the conversation. I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart. I agree with that. But that's not far enough when we know there are things that work. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country. There are reasonable things that we can do to make a difference. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris, as an attorney general, worked on this issue. She knows that it's there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there, do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go? When we know there's countries around the world that their children aren't practicing these types of drills. They're being kids. We owe it to them to get a fix. These are things that shouldn't be that difficult. You can still keep your firearms, and we can make a difference. We have to. If you're listening tonight, this breaks your heart.
Senator.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. I'm sorry about that, and I hope that you're doing okay. Christ have mercy. It is awful. And I appreciate what Tim said, actually, about Finland, because I do think it illustrates some of the frankly, weird differences between our own country's gun violence problem and Finland. Okay, first of all, we have way higher rates of mental health abuse, or mental health substance abuse. We have way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety. We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country that I really do think that we need to get to the root causes of, because I don't think it's the whole reason why we have such a bad gun violence problem, but I do think it's a big piece of it. Another driver of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have to empower law enforcement to arrest the bad guys, put them away, and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here, but I do think at our schools we've got to talk about more security.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but it's only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those ready to teach gun safety. I'm of an age where my shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice. That's not where we live today. And several things I want to mention on this is, talking about cities and where it's at, the number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of children getting guns and shooting themselves. And so we have, and we should look at all of the issues. Making sure folks have health care and all that, but I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing mental health, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns. It's just the guns, and there are things that you can do about it. But I do think that this is
I like that. Sometimes it's just the gun.
Conversation.
Like we're making it everything.
To find solutions on this that work, protect Second Amendment, protect our children. That's our priority.
Gentlemen, thank you. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. Let's turn now to the top contributor to inflation, the high cost of housing and rent. There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes to the high housing prices. Governor Walz, the Harris campaign promises a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes, and won't handing out that kind of money just drive up prices higher?
No, it's not handing out. First, let me say this issue of housing, and I think those of you listening on this, the problem we've had is that we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity. It can be bought up, it can be shifted, it can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the vice president is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead. We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing, but a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that make it there. Now, look, you're going to pay it back, and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value, the generational wealth that's created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in stock because we put some of these things in, and we're implementing a state program to make sure we give some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. A, home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic, all of those. We understand healthcare. It's why we're ranked first on affordability and accessibility and quality of healthcare. And so what I know is under Kamala Harris, more people are covered than they have before. And those of you listening, this is critical to you. Okay. Now, Donald Trump all of a sudden wants to go back and remember this. He ran on the first thing he was going to do on day one was to repeal Obamacare.
Right.
On day one, he tried to sign an executive order to repeal the ACA. He signed on to a lawsuit to repeal the ACA, but lost at the Supreme Court. And he would have repealed the ACA had it not been for the courage of John McCain to save that bill. Now, fast forward, what that means to you is you lose your pre-existing conditions. If you're sitting at home and you got asthma, too bad. If you're a woman, probably not. Broke your foot during football, might kick you out. Your kids get kicked out when they're 26. Kamala Harris negotiated drug prices for the first time with Medicare. We have 10 drugs that will come online, the most common ones that'll be there. But look, this issue, and when Donald Trump said, I've got a concept of a plan, it cracked me up as a fourth grade teacher.
It cracked me up too. I was like,
concept. Never
concept.
given me that. But what Senator Vance just explained might be worse than a concept, because what he explained is pre-Obamacare. And I'll make this as simple as possible because I have done this for a long time. What they're saying is, if you're healthy, why should you be paying more? So what they're going to do is let insurance companies pick who they insure, because guess what happens? You pay your premium, it's not much. They figure they're not going to have to pay out to you. But those of you a little older, gray, got cancer, you're going to get kicked out of it. That's why the system didn't work. Kamala Harris will protect and enhance the ACA.
Governor, thank you. Senator, you have not yet explained how you would protect people with
sounds
pre-existing
good, doesn't
conditions
he?
or laid out that plan.
Well, look, we currently have laws and regulations in place right now that protect people with pre-existing conditions. We want to keep those regulations in place, but we also want to make the health insurance marketplace function a little bit better. Now, what Governor Walz just said is actually not true. A lot of what happened, and the reason that Obamacare was crushing under its own weight, is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way that preserved people's access to coverage who had pre-existing conditions. But again, something that these guys do is they make a lot of claims about if Donald Trump becomes president, all of
What did he just
consequences
say?
are going to ensue.
He didn't
In
understand what he
reality,
just said.
Donald Trump was president, inflation was low, take-home pay was higher, and he saved the very program from a Democratic administration that was collapsing
Your
and would
tooth?
collapse
Leave that
absent
tooth
his
alone.
leadership. He
Don't
did
you
his
dare.
job, which is
Leave it,
govern
leave
in a
it.
bipartisan way and
Baby
get
girl, her
results,
tooth is
not just
coming out.
complain about problems,
You
but
guys have
actually solve
kids?
them.
Governor, did
teeth start
enrollment
falling
under
out.
the Affordable
So
Care Act
cute.
go up under the
So
Trump
I get to be a
administration?
tooth fairy,
It's higher
very
now
soon.
that we've seen it go up.
It's the
People
first day
using
of
it. The system
wiggling.
works.
She's been wiggling it all
And the
day,
question
so
about this,
it'll
young
probably
people
come
are
out
that's
in a
the
couple of
individual
days.
mandate piece of
She's had a
this.
rough week.
And
She was sick
Republicans
last
are
week.
tooth and
That's why
nail
she's like all
saying,
hype
well,
and
Americans should be
home.
free to do this. Well,
She's
that's
at
I
home.
think
The individual mandate's a good idea.
And then,
I think the idea of making sure
yeah,
that
and
this
then
pool
now
is
her
broad
teeth,
enough to cover it,
and now
that's the
she's
only way
healed
insurance
from being
works.
sick.
When it
Now her
doesn't, it
teeth.
collapses. You are asking pre-ACA where we get people out. Look, people know that they need to be on health care. People expect it to be there, and when we are able to make it, and we are making it this way, when we incentivize people to be in the market, when we help people who might not be able to afford it get there, and we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I heard people say, well, I don't want to buy into Medicare or whatever. Good luck buying health care once you get past 70. So look, the ACA works. We can continue to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way she made everything better was negotiating those 10 drugs on Medicare for the first time in American history.
Thank you. Margaret?
Can I address that?
I apologize. We're out of time. We have a number of subjects to discuss. Margaret?
Let's talk about families in America.
There
There
is
is a
a notes a little
childcare
better,
crisis
but we'll
in
still
this
talk about it
country,
on
and the
Tuesday.
United States is
So I
one
do
of the
lives
very
every
few
Tuesday at 2
developed
p.m.,
countries
guys.
who pay workers while they are home taking care of their newborns. You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, 6 weeks
that's
now,
negotiable,
okay.
and that's what Congress works. But here's what the deal is. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company. Look, we're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California. Those companies provide paid family medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family medical leave. You have a child, and I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is that gets the child off to a better start, the family works better, we stay in their employers, we get more consistency in that. So Kamala Harris has made it a priority. We implemented it in Minnesota and we see growth. That's how you become a pro-business state. But the negotiations on it, and here's the issue, those big companies are able to offer it. Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens. You end up staying home. In some cases, that means no paycheck because you've got no protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has said for the wealthiest amongst us. He's willing to give those tax breaks to the wealthiest. He's willing to say, bust those unions up, do whatever. What we're saying is the economy works best when it works for all of us. And so a paid family medical leave program, and I will tell you, go to the families or go to the businesses and ask them. As far as childcare on this, you have to take it at both the supply and the demand side. You can't expect the most important people in our lives to take either our children or our parents to get paid the least amount of money. And we have to make it easier for folks to be able to get into that business and then to make sure that folks are able to pay for that. We were able to do it in Minnesota, and I'm still telling you this. We were listed as the best state. We're still in crisis on this. A federal program of paid family medical leave and help with this will enhance our workforce, enhance our families, and make it easier to have the children that you want.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, do you support a
He said a bunch of
national
nothing,
paid leave
y'all.
program? And if so, for how long should employers be mandated to pay their
Yeah, but
employees
I don't
while they're
know.
home taking care of their newborn? You have 2
See what he
minutes.
said.
Yeah, well, first of all, Margaret, a number of my Republican colleagues and some Democrats, too, have worked on this issue, and I think there is a bipartisan solution here because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean, look, I speak from this very personally because I'm married to a beautiful woman who is an incredible mother to our 3 beautiful kids, but is also a very, very brilliant corporate litigator, and I'm so proud of her. But being a working mom, even for somebody with all of the advantages of my wife, is extraordinarily difficult. And it's not just difficult from a policy perspective. She actually had access to paid family leave because she worked for a bigger company. But the cultural pressure on young families and especially young women, I think makes it really hard for people to choose the family model they want. A lot of young women would like to go back to work immediately. Some would like to spend a little time home with the kids. Some would like to spend longer at home with the kids. We should have a family care model that makes choice possible. And I think this is a very important substantive difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's approach. I mean, look, if you look at the federal programs that we have that support paid family leave right now, the Community Development Block Grant, and there's another block grant program that spends a lot of money from the federal government. These programs only go to one kind of child care model. Let's say you'd like your church maybe to help you out with child care. Maybe you live in a rural area or an urban area and you'd like to get together with families in your neighborhood to provide child care in the way that makes the most sense. You don't get access to any of these federal monies. We want to promote choice in how we deliver family care and how we promote child care because, look, it is unacceptable. And, of course, Sim and I have been on the campaign campaign trail a lot the past 7 or 8 weeks, and one of the biggest complaints I hear from young
this
families
is,
is people who feel like they don't have options, like they're
I'm
choosing.
just doing a lot of
between
listening
going
at
to
this
work
one.
or taking
The
care
other
for
one was
their
like more
kids. That is
entertaining,
an
so I was like
incredible
cracking up. This one you
burden
actually
to
have
put
to
on
listen
American
to. Like,
families. We're the only country that does it. I think we could do a heck of a lot
they're
better.
not doing a lot of personal
Senator,
jabs.
thank you.
It's just straight
You
kind of
have
information.
also
So
said,
I'm trying to take it all
Senator Vance,
in.
many things
Kinda
about the
understand what
American
they're
family.
saying.
The Federal Reserve says
A lot of it is
parents
just talking
will spend
points,
nearly as much on
addressing. It's not
childcare
really
as they do on
kind of
housing
meat and
each
potatoes,
month.
passionate.
So I want to get your
addressing
thoughts on
thoughts.
this. President Trump recently said, as much as childcare is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in. Is President Trump committed to the $5,000 per child tax credit that you have described? You have 1 minute.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here a little bit, is that we're going to be taking in a lot of money by penalizing companies for shipping jobs overseas and penalizing countries who employ slave laborers
Crazy.
and then ship their products back into our country and undercut the wages of American workers. It's the heart of the Donald Trump economic plan. Cut taxes for American workers and American families. Cut taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America, but penalize companies and countries that are shipping jobs overseas. That's the heart of the economic proposal. And I think what President Trump is saying is that when we bring in this additional revenue with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family leave, child care options that are viable and workable for a lot of American
Ball is
families.
rolled. I think this would have happened like back in the 70s.
Can you clarify
but
how that will
nowadays
solve
with
the childcare
globalization,
shortage?
how are you gonna?
Well,
They're just
because,
gonna
as
increase
Tim
the
said,
tariffs
a
to
lot of
import the
child care
stuff.
shortages, we just don't have enough resources.
You can't tell these companies like Apple or Facebook, oh, you have to be here in the U.S. and we're gonna tax you more if you go outside, and then they're not still gonna go outside. They're just gonna go outside, create their headquarters overseas, and then they're gonna tax the U.S. for any inconvenience, essentially.
Thank you, Senator.
So
Governor
that will
Walz,
actually create us to be a
your
weaker
ticket also has
powerhouse
some
than a
child care
stronger
tax
one.
credit proposals. Do you think Congress will agree
Same
to
thing
the
that happened with China.
$6,000
Trump
credit
already
for
did
newborns
that.
and
Like when he
$3,000 credit
taxed
for
them
children over the age of 6,
to import,
as your campaign has
they taxed
promised?
us.
Is that realistic?
If
they
these
taxed
members of
us to
Congress are
export.
listening to
So it's
anybody, I
like
can tell you,
we end up paying more, and that's why
this is the
everything's so
biggest issue.
expensive right
Everybody
now.
listening tonight knows. I mean, I'm sure they were shocked to hear it's not that expensive. And let's be clear, whether it's 5,000 or 6,000, that plays you about 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
Let's be clear of where we're at on this. It's because we got out of an imbalance on this. We thought we were going to get by not paying people. I don't think Senator Vance and I are that far apart. I'm not opposed to what he's talking about on options. We've done scholarships types of things. I think we need to be open to making the case. But the issue here is, the question you ask is, you're not going to pay for it with these tariffs. That's just adding another $4,000 on the family and taking less. So not only do they not get the money to pay for that, they're $4,000 in the hole. That's Wharton School. That's his alma mater. And so I think the issue here is, if those members of
Wharton
Congress,
School of
I can't
Business.
believe they're not. When I go to businesses, sure, they'll talk about taxes sometime, but they will lead with childcare and they will lead with housing, because we know the problem is, especially in a state like Minnesota, we need more workers because our economy's growing, but we need the workforce.
Governor, thank you. We need to move on. Nora?
Let's talk about the state of democracy,
Yes,
the
that
top
will.
issue for Americans after the economy and inflation. After the 2020 election, President Trump's campaign and others filed 62 lawsuits contesting the results. Judges, including those appointed by President Trump and other Republican presidents, looked at the evidence and said there was no widespread fraud. The governors of every state in the nation,
okay.
Republicans and Democrats, certified the 2020 election results and sent a legal slate of electors to Congress for January 6th. Senator Vance, you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it. Look, what President Trump has said is that there were
I think we're
problems in
too focused on the
2020,
future.
and my own belief
talk about
is that
right
we
now.
should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president, Donald Trump left the White House, and now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration. I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk about. It is the threat of censorship. It's Americans casting aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow citizens, and it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow Americans, she'd like to censor people who engage in misinformation. I think that is a much bigger threat to democracy than anything that we've seen in this country in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years. Now, I'm really proud, especially given that I was raised by two lifelong blue-collar Democrats, to have the endorsement of Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. Of course, they don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue. We don't have to agree on every issue, but we're united behind a basic American First Amendment principle that we ought to debate our differences. We ought to argue about them. We ought to try to persuade our fellow Americans. Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship at an industrial scale. She did it during COVID. She's done it over a number of other issues, and that to me is a much bigger threat to democracy than what Donald Trump said when he said that protesters should peacefully protest on January the 6th.
Governor?
Well, I've enjoyed tonight's debate, and I think there was a lot of commonality here, and I'm sympathetic to misspeaking on things, and I think I might have with the senator. But
Me too, man.
There's one though that this.
Yeah, I mean, it's very like friendly,
I think we need to tell the story.
which I guess is good.
Donald
but I
Trump
feel like the
refused to acknowledge this.
Kamala
The fact is that I
Trump
don't
one
think
was
we
like
can
more
get the frog in the
cutthroat,
pot and let
and
the
I feel
boiling
like
water
it
go
was.
out. He was very
It was
clear that
literally
he lost
dog eat
his
dog. They're
election
eating the
and
dogs.
said
Like it was crazy.
140
This
police
one is
officers
just
were
so
beaten
much
at the Capitol
information.
that
It's
day.
going to be
Some
so.
of the
I feel
American
so bad
flag
for the
several
fact
later
checkers.
died. It
What?
wasn't
The
just
fact
in
checkers
there.
tonight.
In
Say
Minnesota,
that 5
a
times.
group
I
gathered
feel
on the
so
state
bad for
capitol
them
grounds
because they're
in
gonna have a
St. Paul
lot of fact
and said,
checking
"We're
because
marching
they're
to the
talking in
governor's
such like
residence, and there may
monotone
be
way.
casualties." The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying
Son
by
and
state
dog.
police.
State police.
That issue, and Mike Pence standing there as they were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over. I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands, and then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's what was at stake here. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter. A president's words matter. People
President's
hear
words
that.
matter.
So
That's a fact.
I think this issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened
God, John
on
Amos
January
died.
6th,
Y'all ain't
the
telling me.
first time in American
Rest in
history
peace.
that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, we need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
Margaret?
That ain't gonna
Senator
happen.
Vance, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, look, Tim, first of all, it's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country. We are going to shake hands after this debate and after this election. And of course, I hope that we'll win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he wants it. But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016 said that Donald Trump had the election stolen by Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, I'm just reading like
because
some
the
of the comments.
Russians
It's
stole
basically
like
saying
$500,000 worth of Facebook
essentially-
ads. This has been going on for a long
Yeah,
time.
what he's saying, like,
And if
it's
we
been
wanna
going
say that
on.
we need to respect the results
They're not
of the
going to
election,
respect the vote.
I'm
We
on
already
board.
know
But
that.
if
They
we
have
wanna
to
say
prepare
that Tim
themselves. They're
Walz
not
said
going
this
to
is
never
just a
ever going to
problem
respect
that
whatever
Republicans have
vote,
had,
whatever out, unless it's
why
like a complete
Governor,
wash,
January
which you
6th
know
was
it's
not
not. It's only going to be like a
Facebook
2
ads.
or
And I
3
think
point
revisionist
difference.
history on this. Look, I don't understand how we got to this point, but the issue was that happened. Donald Trump, can you do it? And all of us say there's no place for this. It has massive repercussions. This idea that there's censorship to stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do something, that's not censorship. Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen that brought up. I just think for everyone tonight, and I'm going to thank Senator Vance. I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement, but this is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just say, did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
This is like, we're literally at the end of we're in our last days, y'all.
Talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the power of the government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this present political moment. I would like Democrats and Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come together.
You're reaching with that one. That's a reach.
That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't wear a mask.
Senator, the governor does have the floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of every American.
Senator, the governor does have the floor for 1 minute to respond to you.
Yeah. Well, I don't run Facebook. What I do know is I see a candidate out there who refused, and now
that said a lot and said nothing at the same time.
He lost the election. This is not a debate. It's not anything anywhere other than in
Why so sad? It's a fact. Oh, is that right?
When Mike Pence made that decision to certify that election, that's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about is, where is the firewall with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office?
So they're begging us. We only can make our votes. At the end of the day, we're not throwing no bulls. Even like say something like that, and then like some Democrats go turn up. They can take that as like a insurgent kind of situation, because he's just basically saying stand with us if we win. But that's what Donald Trump was saying too, like stand with me if we win. And he didn't believe that he lost, so that's why he went crazy. But it wasn't right, but it was actually a mess. I just hope that there's not like more divide than there already is. It's just like enough is enough. Like I wish we can get on the same page a little bit more as a country, because this is getting kind of dangerous. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not even enjoyable anymore with how divided things are. At least before, you'd feel like, okay, no matter what, we're still like kind of one country. We just super disagree. But now it's like it's getting kind of tense. So I don't know. And this debate is different than I thought it would. These commercials are getting so creepy nowadays. It's getting just so tense, like with all the threats around the world. Like it feels like really shaky. So I'm just praying that whoever wins does something in regards to something, because at this point it's just been a bunch of promises and not too much action. Like I think we had a lot of action under Trump, good or bad, a lot of movements, and I feel like I already knew when Joe Biden came in he was going to be more of a transitional president to kind of just get us out of that dark space where we were heading. But you know, now literally the ball is in our court. So what are the vibes? I'm not even sure, to be honest with you. I can't even tell. I can't, like, based on even just like looking at different tweets and texts as we were like sitting here and stuff, like it's literally 50-50. Like it's blue is red, back and back and back. Comments MAGA, comments Dems, liberal, you know what I'm saying? So some people even throwing in RFK up in there. So I really can't call it. Like, I gotta talk to my aunt. She called Trump. She was like, back in 2017, 2016. She's like, yeah, Trump is gonna win. Da, 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 da. And I was like, really? And he did. So I think, I can't call this one either. So maybe I'll call her and see what she predicts. Can't call it either way. I will survive for as long as I know how to love. I know I stay alive. So I will be alright, but you'll be alright too. We'll be alright regardless. But it's just fun to watch, right? I don't know how Walter's doing good. JD, they're saying JD lying. They said JD sold a total of 24 lies so far, and Walt has only told number 8. I don't know. I'm not fact checking. Like I said earlier, I feel really bad for the fact checkers. They're gonna have a hell of a job on them come Monday or come tomorrow. Did I take any notes so far while I was on commercial? As soon as I find my notes. No, I just took general stuff like, yeah, I kind of stopped taking notes because it just got redundant. They're mostly just talking about Trump continuing to benefit, well, the Dems continuing to benefit off of like old Trump policies and stuff like that. That's kind of all JD is talking about, and kind of giving a lot of any positives that are going on with the Dems credit to Trump, and any negative that is going on with the Dems credit to the Dems. So that's kind of how he's playing it. Like, if it's positive, he gets the credit. If it's negative, they get the credit. I don't know. The put your money where your mouth is. Yeah, he's talking about the same. It seems like with Walt, his big thing is healthcare. So he's mostly talking about healthcare reform. That's what he fumbled on, that family medical leave question. I feel like he fumbled on that a little bit. Don't you guys think? Hey, Callie, I told you I was going to hop on tonight, and I did it. I decided to come through. Yeah, so the paid medical family leave, that's the tonight, and I did it. I decided to come through. Yeah, so the paid medical family leave, that's the thing I did. Minutes left, y'all, because I said I'm staying on until my phone dies, and it just gave me the 10% hit. He said Donald Trump is the first president that made the most profit overseas in any president ever. So I thought that was a bar, because like, is that true? Fact checkers, they got a lot of work tomorrow. Okay, they're bad guys, so I'm gonna be quiet.
Folks who miss Dancing with Their Stars, I appreciate it, but look, the support of the democracy matters.
Let me know if you can't hear
matters
it.
that you're here. And I'm as surprised as anybody of this coalition that Kamala Harris has built.
Thank you for my likes.
From
I
Bernie Sanders
appreciate
to Dick
that.
Cheney to Taylor Swift.
Thank you.
And a
Thank
whole
you
bunch
for
of folks in
liking.
between there.
I appreciate
And they
it.
don't all agree on everything, but they are truly optimistic people. They believe in a positive future of this country, and one where our politics can be better than it is. And I have to tell you, that better than it is the sense of optimism that there can be an opportunity economy that works for everyone, not just to get by, but to get ahead. And the idea that freedom really means something. Not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself. Now look, we all know who Donald Trump is. He's told us, and as Maya Angelou said, believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address talked about American carnage, and then he spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that. All the while asking everyone, join this movement, make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th for Kamala Harris.
Governor Walz, thank you. Senator Vance, your
It
closing
seems like they want to
statement.
wrap it up, so I think we're gonna be able to have enough batteries, so that's good.
Of course, the
And
American
to
people for
see the
tuning
whole
in this
thing.
evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that too has gotten harder with Kamala because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now, I've been in politics long enough
We have to remember
Kamala
Kamala's not the
Harris does when
president.
she stands
Biden
before the
is.
American people and says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people anywhere in the world. But they're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you, and good night.
Senator Vance, thank you. And thank you both for participating in the
That's it, y'all. All right. So I'm going to see y'all later. We had a good time. That was fun. Thank you guys. The ones who joined me, I appreciate it. That was so much fun.
All of us here at CBS News.
Definitely wasn't as entertaining as I mean, just oh, look at that. You know, I love, my favorite thing is sportsmanship, guys. Like, I think legit, like, that's, to me, that's it. That's what I'm teaching the future. That's what I want for the future. I want respect, a sportsmanship there. Oh my gosh, and I love that the wives came out at the end. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Oh, beautiful. I love that. That's my favorite part of everything, of sports in general. Of, like, I used to do debate in high school, all that kind of stuff. Is this right here. It didn't get nasty. See, everybody feels the same. Look, listen.
They took their shots.
I'm sorry, it's a little blurry.
It was earnest. And there were even moments of kind of congeniality and collegiality.
There were a number of moments where each of the candidates turned to each other and said, I agree with you when Governor Walz said,
that was what I loved it. I really did, guys. I love camaraderie. Like, I like when people get along. I like when people laugh. I like when we get work done. It's just so fun. I hate when it gets like tense and get personal when you're in my business. Like, you don't need to know what I did at 7:45, you know, like on a Tuesday. Like, I hate that. But I love this. Like, just the facts, sir. Just the facts. So I think I'm going to leave you guys here tonight. But again, I appreciate you guys for joining me. I will see you guys, if not sooner. I'm going to try to post. Maybe I'll come on, try to do live here a little bit more frequently. But as of now, like, the solid time, Tuesdays at 2 p.m. So I'll see you guys then. Have a good night. Take care, and I hope you enjoyed this debate. Bye.
Was a strong night for Senator.
Good night.
Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is